Colfax City Council meeting of May 8th, 2014 is now in session. City Clerk, would you read the roll?
Councilmember Burris is not present at the time. Councilmember Hilberg.
Here.
McCauley. Here. Loman.
Here.
And Mayor Douglas.
Present. The city clerk lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. No Mick tonight?
Nick's on the TV.
Oh, let's see if he can.
He's at it.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda order? Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. 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 Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Statement of conflict of interest. Does any council member have any change in their conflict of interest?
Nope.
No. Consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar will be considered with one blanket motion unless somebody wishes to pull one for discussion. Is there any items that anyone wants to pull for discussion?
Nope.
Any? No.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mayor Douglas, really quick, I would like to make a note on the consent calendar. Item 1 states that the minutes are from April 10th and the minutes provided to you in the packet are April 24th. So it's just a typo. Doesn't need to be removed, but that is what you were approving.
Not somebody caught that.
Yeah.
Amanda did.
Consent, it passes, consent calendar. Blanket approval. Okay. Jeez. Next.
Agency reports.
Yeah.
The agency reports. Bastrop County Sheriff's first.
Good evening.
What is this?
Hey, Sergeant Kevin Griffiths, your station commander. We've had a busy week, as I'm sure everybody is aware in town. Started Thursday with a subject acting out at Marvell's. We got complaints that he was trying to get into the store. Our deputies arrived there. He took off and went pursuit right away through downtown. He made it over to his house, which was off of Tokiana. Our deputies made it up to the house at that point. Unfortunately, when they pulled up to the house, he was already in the house and it came over the air that he was known to have firearms and our deputies backed out. At that point, we called in our crisis negotiation team. They came in, called him on the phone and spent about an hour talking him out of his house. As we had 10 other deputies around the house waiting for him to come out, he came out to basically walk from his garage to the patio. And they put the habeas gravis on him and put him into a patrol car, got him some help, got him into custody. So that one was fairly well, went the way we'd like to without having to use force of any type. Unfortunately, that night, we had another incident here in Colfax at the McDonald's where our deputies had been looking for a day or two for a van that had been known to be burglarizing some businesses around Colfax. They found that van parked in the McDonald's parking lot. When they went to go contact that subject, he immediately became aggressive towards those deputies. They backed out. They started doing de-escalation techniques. They got the sergeants up there, called for them immediately. Unfortunately, during their contact with him, shots were fired by that subject at our deputies. They returned fire. One of our deputies was hit in the neck and exited out his back. They immediately got him over to Whitcomb where we have CAL FIRE was able to get helicopter right away, a medical helicopter into Whitcomb, and they did some great work from Station 30 to come and help our deputy out in that time. And the other deputies, they were able to fly him off to Sutter Roseville Medical Center. While that was happening, our sergeant on scene called out our SWAT team, or SET team is what we call it, just in case you guys don't always know what that means. It's the Special Enforcement Team. They came up with their gear, some heavier equipment than what we normally carry on patrol. And they spent some time trying to talk him out. They treated it as a barricaded subject. And when they finally made entry on that van, unfortunately, they found him deceased inside that van. Our deputy, if you guys were all following along, and I wanted to thank Trinity, Caroline, and Sean. On Monday, our deputy walked out of the hospital from that shooting and to a crowd that was a couple of hundred people deep, and the cheers. And I can tell you today, after I don't know much about the shooting, I don't go and ask those questions. It's an ongoing investigation that I don't need to be in a part of right now. We are very lucky that that is all that happened to our deputies that night. We could have lost a couple of deputies in that shooting that night from that suspect. So we're very fortunate that it ended the way it did, and that Deputy Porter was able to walk away from that in good spirits, extremely good spirits. And apparently, according to Cal Fire and the guys at 30, good spirits even when he was shot and laying on the ground at Whitcomb. They took really good care of him. So that was the major event. Again, yesterday we had another subject on at one of the churches at the south side of town who was peeking through the window. The church houses a school there. When the people came out to contact him and ask him what he was doing, he pulled out a machete on them. Our deputies, again, with me, we found him right near Canyon Way, right next to the freeway, and we were able to take him into custody as well and kind of hopefully put the town to sleep for a few days, give us a little bit of a break so we can get ready for summer and turn some things over. That's what I've got to report on tonight. I'm also here to answer any questions that you have. Just be aware if you're going to ask about the officer involved shooting, I don't have much more than what you already know based on Facebook. Like I said, I don't go over and ask a bunch of questions because there's a full investigation that needs to happen. So.
Just one easy question. Is the person local, or can you say?
No, so that was posted on Facebook. Let me pull that up because I'll tell you his name. We did identify him. His name, he's a 37-year-old Stephen Todd Sharp out of Tennessee. He's been known to be staying in his van around town. And like I said, we were already looking for him. His van was a very unique van. The deputies there that night had been basically searching for him to try to get him into custody for already doing bad stuff in our town. And unfortunately, obviously, he was up to no good and he decided to do what he did that night. You're welcome. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Next, CHP.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Officer Jason Lyman, California Highway Patrol Gold Run Area Public Information Officer. I have a few stats to go over for last month. We did also just had, all the snow and rain that happened the last couple of weekends that really is difficult on everything because late in the year, a lot of people are not prepared for driving in the snow at that time. And also the like Caltrans, they start laying off some of their winter help. And so there's reduced help. And we had a tremendous amount of crashes and stuff involved with that. Most of that was all up near the Donner Summit. And we had to, that's what forced us to close the freeway for multiple hours, several different days, just to try to get all the crashes taken care of and clear the roadway. For last month, just the Gold Run area, they issued 280 citations. They had 9 arrests, 6 of which were DUI related. We had 1 fatality collision on the 26th that happened during the snowstorm, just eastbound, just east of Drum Forebay. F-250 that was going up the hill there for it still being under investigation, but for whatever reason, it slid off into the center divider and struck a tree, and the right front passenger was killed in that collision. We also had a total of 19 collisions, 8 of which were injury collisions, but other than the 1 fatality, all of the other injuries were minor to moderate injuries. That's pretty much what I've got for our stats for this month. Do you have any other questions that I can answer?
I had somebody ask me on one of the last times we had to divert traffic down, coming down Rollins Lake Road. And they live right there, that corner where Rollins, hits 174. And they said in the past, probably quite a while ago in the past, you guys used to station an officer down there to help because a lot of people don't really know where they're supposed to go when they get there. And it doesn't seem that's happened the last few times. Is that at all possible to try to make that come back when we have to divert traffic that way?
We do try to do that, but these last couple storms between the few people of Caltrans that are on, and we're also very shorthanded. We just did not have the manpower to man that station.
Okay. I figured that was the answer, but I told her I would make sure to ask.
Yes, that is always an issue in that area right there, and also where Rollins Lake gets onto AED up there. People, that's like a round robin area there that is always a problem. And whenever we have enough people to do it, that is definitely on our list to try to cover those areas. Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to step back up real quick because I would be remiss without thanking the other agencies that helped us out. California Highway Patrol was there very quickly to shut down the roads. I called Ron at 2 something in the morning. And I got to tell you, it didn't even sound like he had fallen asleep. He was wide awake. I'm still groggy in my eyes. And I asked him for some help with barricades. So your public's work crew came out in the middle of the night to shut down all the roads around there that we needed to shut down. So I wanted to thank Ron and his team for that. And then also the businesses of Colfax. I know that we shut down quite a few businesses for at least 3/4 of the day, half the day. And as we were aware that affects their businesses in this town, their cooperation, I didn't hear one person complain to us about any of that. So that's a very appreciated on our side as the sheriff's office.
Thank you. Cal Fire, any?
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, members of the public. Bob Counts, Assistant Chief with Cal Fire, Placer County Fire Department. I have our statistics up on the screen there for April. Our Cal Fire Station 30 ran 73 calls last month, with 48 of those being within Colfax city limits. And for Company 36, our volunteer response totaled 13 this month for 27%, a good number there. For Cal Fire, we're entering our hiring season for our seasonal staff. Our next hiring will be on June 3rd, and then we anticipate going to our peak staffing for the unit on June 17th. Our Grass Valley Air Attack Base will also open for full reload on June 17th. Just a reminder that burn permits were required as of May 1st. And you can obtain burn permits online at the burn permit, www.burnpermit.ca.gov. And just a reminder that burn permits obtained last year, they all expire on May 1st if you got a permit through the online program. So you'll have to go in and renew those. I sent the city manager, Ron, an email earlier this week about an event we're putting on in late July. We're doing some board tours for our Board of Supervisors. And I've secured 3 slots for city council members to attend. It'll be July 26th, the full day event. We'll be touring multiple fire stations and our air base and Grass Valley Emergency Command Center. So just wanted to extend that invitation to the council members, and hopefully you all can attend. Lastly, at the last meeting, I reported that our battalion chief, Jeff Lovelace, accepted a promotion at Sacramento headquarters, and I have successfully hired or filled his position behind him. And I would like to introduce Battalion Chief Clint Siebert to the council, and I'm going to let him say a few words.
Good evening. My name is Clint Siebert. I've been with Cal Fire for 14 years, most of which is right here in Placer County, and 2 years as a battalion chief. Last position was at the Placer Center, so just right here in Christian Valley, and I live local and look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Yeah, Clint's going to be a great addition, and I'm super excited to have him up here in Colfax. So, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have tonight.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, item 6, public comment. Public hearing, there is no, I'm sorry, Chamber of Commerce? No? Okay. All right. Item 5, presentation. There are no presentations. We move on to item 6, public hearing. There is no public hearing. We move on to item 7, public comment. This is a time for the public to make a comment on anything that's not on the agenda. You have 5 minutes. And anything that you discuss or bring up might be considered for future action on the agenda. Any comment by the public on any item that's not on the agenda?
Hi, my name is Todd Saylor, 246 North Canyon Way, Colfax. I also own the Fruit Exchange. Most of you probably know that. We have I was gonna try to come up with something witty to say or something snide to say, but really all it is we have a serious dirt bike problem in this town, and it is never addressed. I've heard lots and lots of things about we can't chase them. That's not necessary. They're just parked right in town. They're parked at the gas station last night. They're parked everywhere. I'm tired of it. I probably lost a tenant last night due to that. I like I said, I could come up with some witty things to say, but there's really nothing witty anymore. I count 30 to 40 dirt bikes a day on the weekend in the few hours that I'm here. If you're not aware of that, please come hang out with me. You'll be disgusted because you can't hear and they're rude. It's annoying. And it's all sorts of illegal. There's no good reason that it's still happening other than that it hasn't been made to stop. The person I was talking to last night made the comment, does this happen very often? And I said, honestly, it happens all the time. And he said, not where I'm from. I've lived in lots of cities. I've never seen anything like this. It's incredible. And to this day, I mean, I brought this up lots and lots of times over the course of at least 4 years, and nothing has happened. Nothing except it getting worse. And I feel like I'm like the bad guy, but I don't really care anymore. Something needs to be done immediately, not next year, not 4 years from now. Now it needs to start now. So that was it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
Okay, so I'm not sure where I'm at here with all this. But I understand July's coming up and we're gonna be,
Your name, please.
oh, I'm sorry, Diane Green. I'm from Colfax, outside of Colfax. I understand that there's going to be another vote on the fireworks and how much money is that coming up? So,
They've put in a request for funding, yes.
okay, I just needed some clarification. I'm old hat. I just, growing up, the churches used to take care of people and when we did stuff like that, we went out and sold things or had events to help support that. We didn't put the burden on the taxpayers. And there's so many things, like he was talking about, in the city that need taken care of. The roads, maybe the schools. I don't know if the schools need more financial help. Music program. Was you that mentioned that the kids could come and if they got new instruments and could play? That would be awesome to have the kids come and play at the 3rd of July event. Just more involving the community and having them work at this might get them here. Might have them have a little bit more respect for it. That's about all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? And seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, council and staff reports. Shall we start with Sean?
Nothing to report tonight.
Next week I have a WAC meeting that'll be held in these chambers with Cindy Gustafson and her staff and advisory commission for this area. So I have nothing to report on that. It's held every 2 months. It'll be here next Wednesday if you're interested in what's going on in the county, right in these chambers. Second thing is the Sierra Vista Center. I am the council liaison to that group. And there should be a meeting this next, I believe it's Wednesday on the 15th, same night. And they're going to be choosing new officers. So I'm being a liaison. I'll be here for that. But those are ahead of me. There's a group called the Railroad Heritage Society, and they meet down in Auburn. And I went down there a couple of weeks ago to see what they're talking about. And that's the group with some Colfax representation put up the caboose where it is. And I wanted to see what their thinking is. These are people that give a lot of time and a lot of money to put that caboose there. And I think they're kind of burned out, but I also could sense within them that they're interested in mentoring. And the presentation in particular was about a railroad heritage park here in Colfax. And they have an interest in supporting that, but they believe a new group should be formed, a local nonprofit. I support that. There are 2 people left from Colfax that are in that, and that would be Jim Wood and Roger Staub. And also being on the subcommittee for this council for what is happening there, along with Carolyn. We met with Roger and Ron last week about the thought of moving the caboose over to where the grass is. So it wouldn't take up a lot of the room that currently is occupied by grass, but doing some work with the trees and perhaps a sidewalk. And the intention would be to move it over there and allow more access by the people that work in the museum so that it would be open more often and knowledgeable people could show it to railroad people. And then one more, I reached out to the organization that created that beautiful statue of Chinese railroad workers that was here a few years ago. And at that time, they were interested in having it in Colfax, but for whatever reason, we weren't able to pull that off. I wasn't involved at the time, so I don't know why. But what happened is they then went to Gold Run and they thought it could be by the rest area, and they realized that would be a very bad idea because it's completely unattended up there and it was going to be outside. So right now it's down in Sacramento at the Sacramento Railroad Museum. And it's too big for anything, anywhere for us to have it here. And I spoke to them yesterday. They would be interested in helping out. And the idea would be that their artists could create a smaller version of that statue or a similar one, something that we could have inside the museum. And so that would be my next step. I promised the rest of the committee that I would look into that and to see what it would take. What could the museum accommodate in the way of a statue like that? Because a lot of our Colfax history is with those Chinese railroad workers, and I think it would be a good attraction for people passing through here. So I'm reaching out to see if we can make something like that happen. And that's it for me.
I haven't had any official meetings, lots of little things I've gotten to attend to. And so I can't say I have anything exciting to report right now.
And I'm gonna forego my report tonight for next meeting.
I spent some time going to several Mexican restaurants in Auburn to see if they'd be interested in moving up to one of our currently open facilities or a future facility that may be open soon. And so they are considering it. I also spent some time getting a few bids on what it would cost to move a caboose. And so it's not on paper yet, but they're formulating a bid there. And I went to two different vets to see what kind of a bid they could give us for animal control, because coming up on few items downstream is one about the 68% increase on our cost for animal control. So I'm trying to get some bids ahead of time so we have some options. Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I think the most exciting thing I have a meeting with UP on Friday to discuss the date and time to get it down for the big boy to show up. They're going to do a whistle stop, so it'll be about 15 minutes. They'll be here. So that's exciting. And as soon as I have more information, I'll get it out to everyone, council members and the public. And then for projects, I have Carl Moore here for our city engineer, and he'll go over where we are and update you on our current project list.
Council members, I think Ron set me up because I failed to send him my project list, so he has me coming up here to give you my the project update. So from last month or 2 weeks ago, the council, any changes to the engineering projects? There's not a lot of changes. The INI and the algae projects are on schedule. And the biggest change is the CDBG that starts, the kickoff is on Monday. And they're going to mobilize. They'll have concrete and storm drainage work through June 7th. And then roadway work starts on June 10th. They will be notifying all the residents that will be impacted or potentially impacted by that work. And that's approximately, we walked it and my phone said it was 2.3 miles. So it's probably about 1.5 miles of new roadways that we're going to have here real soon. And that's all I have. Any questions?
No questions? Okay. Item 9A, skate park location. We're to discuss and provide direction to staff concerning the agreement between Colfax and the county planner for funding to build a skate park at Lions Park.
I have to leave the dais due to my personal home being next door to that location where it is now.
Pardon? Any discussion?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to intro the item one.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this item is being brought to before the council because I've received multiple concerns from local citizens and council members about the location of the skate park. So I brought it to you so you can discuss that and see if you're happy with that or find an alternative location.
So I'm gonna come right out with it. I asked him to put it on the agenda, and the reason I asked him to put it on the agenda is because when we first had our discussion, this is gonna bleed into 9B a little bit, but there's no way not to. When we first agreed to accept funds from the county for the skate park, we understood that there was the potential of a repayment if that facility did not remain in use for whatever reason for the full duration of that contract. And under that agreement, we knew that we had enough reserve funds in our pool that if we needed to lean back on that, we could repay that fund. The county's been very generous. They've offered significantly more, and we're very, very grateful. But we've also committed those reserve funds now. We no longer have a backdrop to lean on if for some reason there's a geological concern or ongoing maintenance issue that requires us to not have that park in service for whatever reason. And for that, I think the skate park project is too important for us to not have a plan B. And I would like the council to consider using the Lot of Arts as a backup location to ensure this project can be completed timely by the deadline set That's another requirement in item 9B that we'll get to. There is an in-service date requirement. We need to get the project in service by 2026. If there is some long lead time issue regarding that hillside or other contingency, we are at risk. And if we've started the project, funds will be expended. I just need to know that we have that safety net and assurance that this council is willing to commit a second location. So that's my thought process. I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in here. I'm a bit winded just because of my back brace and everything, but
The biggest, or one of the biggest problems I see with that location is we had had downtown switched into historical designation. And skate park definitely doesn't fall underneath that, in that category.
That's usually fixed though.
Well, but I mean, we changed the designation of, portions of downtown for a specific reason. We wanted them under the historical category. And do we want to open that can of worms just to be able to put a skate park in there?
I would be willing to on the precedent Loomis is set because they've done the exact same thing and they have a skate park directly in their downtown.
Any comments?
So I see a major problem in the fact that we're designing the skate park around the space that we have available. I mean, basically to move it to a location that's not the same size or shape means you have to have a completely different design and puts the project back on one. We've been talking about this project for the whole time I've been on council, and to make changes now, especially if you've been on this project for a while, just doesn't make any sense to me. We're at like the very end. We finally got additional funds and we finally got what we need. We're doing the last little bit of redesign to make it fit the budget, even with all the inflation. I don't see why we keep having back and forth discussion, especially about moving the location. I mean, I understand you got concerns, but
Because the entire funding structure changed. The entire precedent that we built this on has changed.
it really hasn't.
It definitely has by approximately $300,000 it has. So that's my concern and why I think we need to take this very seriously and recognize the fact that we're at the end of the design process. We're not at the end of construction. We haven't even initiated construction. And that's a completely different phase with a lot more impact if you go too far and you can't pull out. So this is just one of those times where if you're going to throw a red flag and say we need a backup plan, this is the last chance. Once we break ground, there's no backup plan. It's we have to proceed. So I know it's uncomfortable to have this conversation now at this juncture, but now at this juncture is when we're presented with the reality that we could be liable for paying back these funds.
We've
And
always,
I'd rather spend $10,000 on redoing designs than $100,000 that we have to throw away.
the time for this type of discussion was like 5 years ago when we were looking over it and trying to figure out other locations and places to put the skate park.
We didn't own the lots then.
And that's what has come up multiple times. Where else could we put it? And
And we didn't own the lots then.
it's not even close to the same size or shape. So it'd basically be, we need two different skate park designs to pick. I don't think that's a fair burden to put on the donators to this and hold the process up further when we've already had this approved multiple times.
I appreciate those points. I will agree with you. None of this is fair to them. Not one last bit of this is fair to the Green Machine or any person who's put work into this project. They've put blood, sweat, and tears into this for over 9 years. There's nothing about this that's fair. And I want to just be really clear that I do empathize with that. But large construction is what I deal with every single day, and you would not believe how much I see go wrong. And if I have a bad feeling about something, I'm not going to just not say something. This is an important project that needs to get done. These kids have waited, let's just be real, 30 years for this project. I want to see it done. I want to see it done right, and I want to see it in service for a minimum of 20 years. And if the way to make that happen in a timely fashion on budget, the way that we need to do it to meet our terms and our contract is to change the location at this juncture and spend more money on plans as opposed to money on construction materials or whatever the case may be, then I'm willing to have that conversation. And the conversation I had with Robert Dugan is that this would not be a problem on his end with the Building Industries Association. So, you know, I appreciate that everybody wants to see it done now. But I think that this is an option that will get us closer. I think I've said my piece at this point. It's very clear that me and Sean are not on the same page, and that's okay. We've got other people here who need to weigh in, so.
Does the general public know the cost to the city if we have to close a skate park down and we're responsible for what, 20 years? We close it down within 20 years, we'll have the costs we have to reimburse. Is the public aware of that?
It's a review. I mean, it's in the.
That's gonna be a 9B is where you're gonna discuss the contract.
All right, so then don't bring that up at this time, I guess.
Part of the reason that I asked for this to be separated is because this is a very serious discussion, and if the council is willing to entertain the alternate location option that I'm asking to put on the table, it also gives us the opportunity to have our fifth council member participate in the financial side of the conversation. So that's why we're broken into two separate items here. We'd have to check with Mick. What is Mick online?
No, Nick's on vacation. Oh, is he?
No, Mick, yeah, Mick is online. I'm somewhere between Great
Sure, Mick.
K and.
Mick, do you want to weigh in on that? Because I'm probably wrong.
Well, I think the question I have, because this just came up to me a day or so ago, is whether the property you propose to move this big.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Mick.
Consider is properly. You can't? Because I'm
So-
sorry, I'm
Let me see if
unmuted.
Mick shows up.
Can you hear me?
For clarification, the concerns that you brought up as to
No. I'm-
what you're wanting to move it down here, you mentioned. Here. Don't mind me. It's okay. It's just because you sit right next to me. I mean, you mentioned, of course, my brain just completely went dead. Concerns about the ground. And the hillside. So
My
that
question
is
is whether
one of the things that you
property-
mentioned, and I would imagine that their investigation, their previous reports had addressed that already. And I know you and I both are on the same page of not loving that location up there, just on the security side of it. What other reasons are you feeling that it would be a better fit down here?
So just because of its location on that hillside, the actual construction process is highly subject to cost overrun. So whenever you're trying to get into a difficult location, and again, with the size difference as well, shape, topography, all of it, you are looking at a more expensive project across the board by putting it on the hillside versus putting it on the lot of arts. That is just a financial reality of construction. So that's part of it, is trying to make sure that we can keep our budget within confines with margins that we're able to control. A big part of the concern is that this is not something where we're looking at having a third party doing the project management and bringing this project online. Because of the funding sources that are being used for this, this becomes a city project and city managed project. So we're going to have to keep a very, very tight grip around the hours that go into it and everything else. And I'm really not doing a great job of articulating myself right now, and I'm well aware of that. But it's hard without giving a full patronizing spiel on project management and construction for me to help the public understand why this seems so high risk at this juncture versus where it was 2 years ago when we were taking less money from the county and it was more of an independent funding effort. So what I am trying to do is create a safety net here to see the project get done in a location it will be used, where the kids are already hanging out, where everybody will get to see it, will know it's in use and service. It will be in an easily maintainable location where we don't have a risk of geological shift, because we've already seen geological shift within the last year. Look at the mudslide on the other side of the hill that happened on Ben Taylor. Just because you have a report done one time does not make a constant condition for 20-year period. And that is where my concerns come in.
What are your thoughts for where else we could basically deal with the stage, add more grass? Because we have such limited grass in our downtown. So I hate to lose any area like that. How could we make that adjustment? And
I'm not proposing that we can.
Okay.
I'm very flatly just asking the city to be willing to gift that area for the project. It's as simple as that.
Any other comments?
Do we know what the size difference would be in space? Is that? We haven't even looked into it.
Because we can't be allocating additional resources or hours into that until the council's even given permission for that. So someone had to bring it up for it to even get these questions answered.
And the only reason that it was taken off before was because we didn't own the property. Is that your recollection, Sean?
You know, 3/4 of the property,
Okay,
plan to take on the other. We've been talking.
okay.
We didn't fully own. Well, we have like 8/10 of the property. Sorry, we own like 8/10 of the property. Thank you. So
Okay.
it was just a small section along Marston's that we didn't own. It was never really looked at as a viable spot because of the size of the lot. You can't really get a viable skate park in there. You're gonna get a couple of ramps and kids running into each other.
Okay,
It's just not really a feasible spot.
with the fact that we're looking at having to pare down the size of the skate park anyways, does it make it a better fit?
We're not really looking at paring down the size. We're looking at possibly, and we can have Ty up here to explain better, but look, maybe change in the future to help it fit the budget. It'll still fit that size of the lot. I mean, Trinity's talking about project management and project design. Well, we've done the geological survey. We've done what we need to do to vet that spot already up there at the ballpark. We know it's a viable spot. We've known it was a viable spot since we first approved that spot. We did all the legwork on that already. All we've asked for is a little bit more funding. We've had the same agreement, same 20 years. I'm sure if something catastrophic happened to the city or anything like that, or the whole hillside fell off, we could renegotiate what's going on with the contract. I don't think the county is going to come after us.
Well, then I feel like we would need to see a clause for that. Because
And then
I can't do handshake deals. It's gotten us into trouble for the last 20 years and put us where we're at.
I don't think that's unreasonable to ask the county if they can put a clause that if it is a geological issue.
Through the chair, this is 9B, we're on 9A, so
well,
we
no,
can just start discussion and move to the contract and what you want to change, it'd be probably more appropriate.
okay.
Okay, for 9E, do you need a motion or direction?
I don't think we've landed anywhere. I think all I was asking is for us to have an open mind about considering it as a backup location, but that was the extent of it. But you've got me in favor, you have got Sean opposed, and then we have, you guys have not yet really actually given a position on that request, so.
Well, I would be in favor of plan B as an option.
I mean, I think really you have to find out if it's even feasible from a design standpoint to put any more effort or energy into it.
I think Ty could come up here and speak to that right now. We want to give him an opportunity to come up and speak about the location. If he'd like to.
I'm okay with that if you are, Mr. Mayor.
Can we do that? Can Ty also comment and provide us a little bit of insight?
Is that a variation plan B?
We're at plan F.
Let's just have Ty come
Yeah,
up and
we're at plan, we just bureaucrated this thing to death.
So that's the question, Ty. Is it even feasible to fit next door?
So I'm really I'll try and maintain my frustration right now. Again, 9 years going into this, and like Sean's talked about, we've talked about this location for many, many, many years. Again, I've looked at all the different locations when I first started this thing, one thing about the location is that it's already zoned recreational. You don't have to do any environmental studies. We don't have to do any of that stuff because it's already zoned recreational. Downtown is not zoned recreational. You have to do a whole environmental study, all that stuff that goes with it. And the fact that you also have historic, this is a historic downtown that does not fit the footprint. You tell people what they can paint their buildings with because it has to be historical colors. but now you want to put a skate park to it, to about 3 or 4 businesses that are vacant. And now you're thinking that they're going to go put a business in next to a skate park. So, you know, when it came to the adding to the addition of this, the park and recreations that we already have, they're already established. And now we're putting an additional thing to the recreational stuff that we have, where kids can walk directly there. They can walk downtown, but now you're adding to the fact that they have to walk up and over the mountain over to here to go to the skate park when they can go directly there to the, you know, from school. You know, I don't understand where the 20-year thing came in, because you guys already agreed to the 20-year commitment when you did the splash park. And now it's all of a sudden an issue with the geological stuff. You know, you guys agreed 2 years ago with the 75,000, there was a 20-year commitment. It wasn't an issue, it was on a consent agenda item. So now all of a sudden it's an issue. So I just don't understand. We put a lot of work into it. It's when it comes to getting it across the finish line, this right here is getting it across the finish line because we are working with a company that you guys approved, and I came to you guys with, is going to take the budget that we currently have with what we have in Green Machine, what we have with the grants that we have with this Park and Rec, with our in-kind donations, putting that together, and they're basically tweaking our current design to fit budget to make it happen. If you're going to move it, and I know we're at the beginning of our, because we already have engineered plans, they don't have to do a lot of work to it to kind of tweak it to make it fit the budget. And they think that we're pretty close to keeping to what we originally have. We have an 11,000 square foot, you know, a skate park that's going to be unique and going to be used by a bunch of different aspects when it comes to the use of recreation, when it comes to scooters, rollerblades, and everything else. Here's small, and you're not going to be able to put the features in that's going to be creative and not be able to have a skate park that can allow for people that are beginners to transition to the higher end stuff. That's all going to be within the design we have now, and go into a smaller location like Loomis. It's very, very limited and very, there's not a lot to offer. So it's not an attraction for people because of that. And that's part of the whole thing of just trying to create something that's unique. So again, we have the skate park company that we're working with. We signed a contract with them to play for with the Green Machine. They have a deadline right now. They want to get this thing dirt built by early spring of 2025. If we move it, it's going to start a whole new process, because you guys have to do a bunch more stuff when it comes to making that a skate park. And also, I guess, avoiding your historic downtown stuff. You have to go through that whole process with that. I have donors, and then you say you talked to Robert Dugan, but Robert Dugan last meeting said it's costing them more money to wait for us because this project has taken so long. It's costing them money. If I all of a sudden go to our donors and go, hey, we're going to move after 9 years, and actually probably 6 or 7 years of being at this location, we're moving at last minute, I'm in fear we're going to lose our in-kind donations, and that's a whole nother ballgame. But moving it here, I don't know where it changes when it comes to the skate park or the park and rec fees from the county if you want to build something. So again, I really hold my tongue when it comes to it because of my frustration with the fact of even thinking about last minute. We have a time frame of getting it done, and throwing that in there, it's just gonna again, I think it's going to be catastrophic to this project.
And I think I'm being grossly misunderstood. When I'm saying backup location, that is truly what I mean. Because we don't know what we don't know until we know. And if we don't have a backup plan ready to go, if plan A has any kind of a failure, that puts the project at risk of not happening.
Well, again, I know Andy Fisher, talking to him, this is the terminology and the verbiage they have in their contract is with every single person that they've done, with schools, with all the people that have reached out for park and rec fees. And Andy Fisher stated that they have never retracted money from anybody for any project ever. The only time they've had one time is when a school wanted to do extra bleachers. They kind of had a cattle prod them saying, hey, you got to get moving on your project, and they did. But again, it's just obviously they're giving $200,000 to the city. They're giving $200,000. I just want to make sure $200,000 to the city to help out on this project because it's in the county master plan is the skate park.
And when they're doing that, of course, they want to have some fail safes when it comes to giving money, that if they don't have anything in there, people just spend whatever they want to do. So again, I understand it's the fine print of the contract when it comes to it, but the city already approved and already agreed to the splash park when they borrowed money for the splash park, not borrowed, but they got money.
Right.
They put into a 20-year agreement with it. It was the same.
And none of us were here. I want to be
I
clear on
understand that, but it's the same thing. It's the same verbiage at the splash park that's going to be right next to the skate park for 20 years.
Yes.
So you guys already committed to 20 years for that, for the splash park. And 2 years ago, the council agreed to 75,000 for 20 years. So I'm just saying it's already been established as far as how would it, when it comes to knowing and understanding, when it comes to this kind of contract money. I understand it's agreement between the city and the county, and it's not on the green machine itself, but obviously it's in the project that we've been spearheading. But again, I'll shut up.
Well, and I understand the concerns, and I think that that's where, again, I think I'm not articulating myself very well here. When we first agreed to accept the first 75,000 from the county, we had our reserve fund fully funded, prepared that if in some horrible situation, we needed to fall back on that in order to repay it, we had a backdrop available. Because we've committed those funds to the skate park as part of the initial construction now, we no longer have that pot of money to fall back on. So we have the original $75,000 liability that's now not backed up, in addition to the added 130,000 that does not have any collateral behind it. And I'm wanting the city to put land up essentially as our backup plan to say, we are putting all this money into this project, and if for some reason we find out we can't keep going full steam ahead, we still have a way to keep going so that we can have our park.
I just don't understand where the fact of right now that, like Sean said, the geological study that they had when they backfilled the pool and all that stuff, they have that study. When it comes to, the fact that you have a ball field and you have all these different, the Lions Park, you have everything that's in, that's involved with this hillside. When you talk about the mudslide, you can't throw that in there because there's a whole nother reason why that happened. And can't disclose that. There's a whole nother reason why that happened. It's not just because of hillside.
Yes.
So, again, when I think with, the fact of right now, all the engineering that we did, it's possible. It's possible to do it there. And so I don't know where we would get hung up on the fact of pulling the trigger. If you guys approve this, to use the park and rec fees from the county, we'll have a skate park in spring of 2025. It will happen. So, and like say with all the stuff that we have and then like say designing it to fit current budget, and like you talked about not going over budget, it's designed to fit budget. That's why we went with this company, and we're spending not $10,000, we're spending $59,000 for them to do that. And on top of that, you have a company that is giving us a hell of a deal. And if you talk about project management, project management usually takes about 20% of their whole project. This is a $700,000 project. Well, they're doing it for about 12 grand being a project manager, and they're known around the world for their designs, and they would project manage that to make sure that they protect the city.
Which is fabulous.
So
I just ask, so if we open up the ground and we find something that we don't know today, what's our backup plan? That's all I'm asking. Because that's all I ask, is that we have a backup plan to make sure that we can build the project if we find out something we don't already know.
And that's what the geological study then they had, is they did that when they backfilled to make sure that it's, and with the city engineer, that's where, again, dealing with new city council and stuff like that, we're starting over sometimes. And so we've had these discussions before you guys even came on, is that there's no issues when it comes to that. Obviously, drainage is going to be something that's going to be incorporated into it so it doesn't affect the people below, and making sure we have appropriate drainage. And so there's no issues that came up within the city engineers at the time.
Can I put Carl on the spot? Would you mind coming up and commenting on that location the best you can? I know it's kind of just throwing you in there, but.
No, I was wanting to come up and talk anyways.
Thank you so much.
First of all, the geotech study I'm not familiar with, but typically the geotech study would have been just on the flat portion of that site, not on the hillside. So probably wouldn't have commented on the stabilization of that hillside. Second of all, I did look quickly on Google Maps. The area next door is about 6,000 square feet, so it'd be roughly half the size of the current design. I think there's a potential issue on how we protect the buildings on the sides. And definitely we would have to block off access to the alley because that would be a serious potential issue, which would also reduce the size of the skate park. So one other option, I think, if council decides to go with the side adjacent, would be to see if the company that Ty's engaged with, if they have any similar projects in between two buildings in a confined space like this, that they could share with council that is good or bad, or share any experiences with it.
Thank you, Carl.
Really quick, Mayor Douglas, the city attorney's audio isn't working, but he did want to remind the council that if there's any consideration of other locations, the zoning would be really important before those were decided.
I do like the idea of a backup plan. For example, the Sierra Vista Center almost gave an okay. And from what I understand, the board currently is not against having a skate park in the Sierra Vista Center. That would be another possible plan B.
It's not our collateral to give, though. And that's kind of my end point. That's fundamentally all I'm getting at here, is that I just want to know if, when we're moving forward, that we're not just 100% committed, but we're 150% committed, that we are so committed to seeing this project go through, that God forbid we run into something. And I mean, we're going in circles about something that frankly, I hope is a non-issue to begin with. But if we do break ground and discover issues that we had no other way of knowing about prior to then, or we end up in one of these situations, I just hope that this council is prepared to move quickly to accommodate the project in whatever way is necessary so that it can move forward and so that we can see the funds well spent, so they don't have to be repaid. Because we will not have backup funds to liquidate in order to repay it. And I'm not comfortable looking at the history with the county and saying, well, it hasn't happened yet, so it won't happen at all. We've unfortunately been subject to a lot of, oh, it happened to us. I mean, look at our sewer situation, very, very different. But still, a lot of these handshake type deals have a tendency to fall through and cause problems. And I want us to rely on the letter of the law and the letter of the contract and have our expectations be in line with what we're agreeing to, and not have expectations out of line with the language we're agreeing to when we put our signature on it. Because at the end of the day, the people sitting up here at this dais are going to be liable for those decisions that we make. So if this council feels comfortable saying, you know, we're happy with the singular location and we don't want to accommodate any backup plans, we don't want to commit this land to it, we don't want to put it on reserve and say, just in case something goes wrong, we're going to make this available to you. If we don't want to do that, that's fine. We don't have to do that. I just think we should.
Now, if something goes wrong, that's the point to look at it, because then you have to stop the project.
Then we don't meet our deadlines because we haven't done the research.
So we've done the research on that location. If we go into this process right now of vetting another location and doing a redesign, we're not going to meet our deadlines anyway. And also the money in this contract, if that we're worried about because of the location, if we want to use any county funding for Parks and Rec, we're going to have the same agreement. So why does it matter if it's a skate park or it's a?
Okay, I don't think I can possibly explain myself any clearer at this point. So there's really not a lot of point of continuing to go in circles.
Okay.
But I do think that it's really important that everybody recognize that Ty pointed out very correctly that it is part of the historic district. I know, Carolyn, you also pointed it out. It's not currently zoned recreationally. And there are steps that we would need to take to prepare it in the situation where we did end up wanting to make that available. And if we were being smart and making sure that we were Gantt charting appropriately, we would already have those steps underway and taken so that God forbid we end up having to make a sudden shift. We don't have to then at that juncture deal with the public hearing process and those administrative burdens that are not a direct cost to the project, but rather part of our normal council process.
If we were being smart, we would have vetted this out years ago and made sure we had a second location if we were worried about it. Because that, if we thought it was going to be a worry, that location has never been a question on whether or not a skate park was going to be able to go up there, because we've had the previous work done and the previous investigations done.
I never thought we were going to have to pay back potentially over $200,000 with no reserve fund.
Oh, we keep bureaucratic project to death. That's what happens with inflation and everything else. So.
And it's that's you just hit on the key point. It's inflation that has really put us here. It's not that anybody here wasn't doing what they were supposed to be doing. It's not that the county's being unreasonable. I don't think the county's being unreasonable. And I feel like I need to point that out, because I think it would be very foolish to start throwing around hundreds of thousands of dollars in parks and recreation funds with no skin in the game to make sure that those facilities are going to stay in service. I mean, it's absolutely the right thing to do to have those terms in there. We are where we are. So I think at this point, we just need to give staff direction so we can move to item 9B.
Well, what do you want to, what do you expect to see if we pick a different location? Do you need another design to fit that location before you're going to approve this contract? Do you want us to just, I mean, is the whole point of this just to talk about the possibility of a future location and we can move on to the contract after?
The whole point and the only thing I'm asking for is for the council to be willing to commit that location as a reserve backup in case it is needed. So we would basically say at this point, just on item 9A, that we would say we're not going to use that location for anything else for the time being. And we're going to have it on hold in case we need it. And we're prepared to zone it recreationally. Those are the things that I'm asking for. I'm not asking for new plans. I'm not asking for us to shift full focus and start trying to redesign for a smaller spot. What I'm asking for is for us to set up the essential preparations. God forbid we need them, because we won't have the cash.
Yeah. With that approach, you're not precluding
No,
anything.
not at all.
And I see no fault with your plan B.
I don't think that's a good location regardless. I think we need to look for a location that would fit the size and actually do something worthwhile for the kids when we put it in, because 6,000 square foot skate park's not going to really accommodate a lot of kids at one time and not have very good features. It's going to end up being a small skate park that's not an attraction. And we're going for something not only to entertain the kids and adults in the town, but bring in people from out of town so we can get more tourism and have something to attract people. So that's really going to cut it out. Now, if you wanted to say, let's go look over by the railroad tracks, which Union Pacific's probably not going to
We've done that
on their property because we've asked about it. And, that's another thing, but I don't know. I don't think picking that location is the best idea, but if you're comfortable in moving forward and just saying that it's not stopping anything, just absolutely, if that project gets 100% stopped in its tracks, already spent all the money, everything like that, or started spending money and they find out there's some catastrophic thing, we will figure out another spot to put it. I still don't think that's a good spot, but if that's what you need to make you comfortable with moving forward and being able to take a look at the contract and possibly approve it then on the next item, then okay.
Like I said, if that's how you feel, if you feel that location just absolutely is just not feasible whatsoever, then fine. Then it's not feasible whatsoever and you don't have to agree to that direction. And I might be completely outnumbered. I just think that, in a worst case scenario as a backup plan, that location is better than the sidewalks the kids have now. And I by no means think this is an ideal primary plan.
Not asking for anything else, no nothing, no redesign, just worst case scenario, we got to do something with the money. It's going there.
I'm with you. I like having a backup plan and I think that's very admirable. I think that's not it though. So it would be one of, like you said, if it's we'll look at something else if all hell breaks loose, but that's not a spot. And while UP doesn't love it, they did just build one right next to the tracks.
They sure did. Yeah.
So UP has granted those permissions and it's not that far. I mean, the thing only opened in the last year or two, so they
So-
have been known to do that.
How about we entertain that as the second spot? Since we know that's not feasible, we know we can get 11,000 square feet over there. It should pretty much fit the
We have rights to
design.
it. Yeah.
And all we'll do is push Union Pacific to give us the possibility of putting one there if needed. We can put up barriers on the one side too.
What kind of rights do we have in that respect? Do we have land rights over that area in any way, shape or form with our easements with you?
Yes, yeah. UP has some say in what goes within the easement of the railroad track, so.
Right. No, they do in general. I mean, even with our roads, but
I'm sure there's, some fencing requirements and stuff that we could probably meet them, but they have recently given permission to do it. So I don't think it's completely out of possibility that we might be able to make that happen if it came to that. Knock on wood, it doesn't.
Right.
You don't like skateboards either?
No, it's a stupid location. Use your head.
No, I 100% agree, but that's worse.
Use your head. Nobody has to in a downtown skate park, any town. Ever. Said once, not now. Okay. I agree.
Okay, are we at a point now where we're ready for direction?
I'm gonna be honest with you, I think we're kind of at a stalemate. I think we only have agreement on the original location. I don't think we're being very productive at this point, so it's probably just time to move on to the next item.
So what I'm hearing is, we're gonna stay with the current location. And then, we'll look at, possible
Yes.
alternate locations should something
We'll show
catastrophic
good
happen to
faith,
that.
but we're not gonna.
So staff is completely happy with
Yeah.
putting it wherever you like. So if that's where you want, that's where we'll put it.
Sounds good.
Okay, we move on to item 9B, which I assume we don't need to discuss because that was.
Well, yeah, no, now we do.
We do. Okay, so 9B is council needs to approve the contract. There's been some discussion about maybe amending the contract, so staff is going to need some direction if that's the case, or just need to know if council is going to approve the contract.
Who from Placer County can speak to this tonight?
I know Andy's available by text message. I spoke to
Okay.
him earlier today, so I can get to him if we need to.
Okay.
I mean, my biggest question then to be, can they put a clause in there that if we do have, some issues with the hillside or something that's out of our purview at this point? If it decides to mudslide on it here in 10 years, it's not something we had any control over necessarily.
And mind you, that's just the example that I picked to try to make my point, just because that's one of the most common things when you actually break ground is to find out what's going on underneath. Doesn't mean that that's fully the case. Really, my big concern is, like you said, force majeure. I want to know that if we are in a situation where it's outside of our control and planning, that we're not going to be subject to the repayment within unreasonable terms. And if they're willing to adopt amendments that put us on a payment plan or anything that will protect us, I'm open to those conversations. I just want to know that they're not going to expect us to drop $200,000 in their lap the moment we run into a problem.
Well,
To the chair, I had a conversation with Placer County, and the 20-year timeline is that's based on playground equipment longevity. And I think the other part of the 20 years, in case you decide to push dirt over it somewhere in between, and not necessarily if you have some kind of catastrophic, but then it's not called out. So if you want it called out, we can work with Nick and Placer County to get something called out.
I think it absolutely needs to be called out, especially when you look at all the damage that we get from trees and snow and all that stuff too. It all can be a potential thing. I mean, my other hesitation in signing this right now is now we're on the hook for having to front a whole lot more money between the state and the county grants, because we have to put that out first. And I think that needs to be a budget conversation to see if we can even make that money available in the budget and with how long it's going to take them to pay that stuff back. So I think until that's addressed.
That part we have in our funds, so we can probably.
Enough for what the addition is. I mean, for the additional money. I mean, that's the question. I need the financial answer is, do we have the money to front this, knowing that it may take them a little while to pay it back. And in the conversation I had with Andy says, they can absolutely work with us in expediting payments back from the county and the draw request and whatnot as we're working through it. But if the money's not there, it's not there. So it's on finance to tell us if that's even going to be there and accessible for us to be able to use it, since now we're talking about a lot more money than we were with the previous agreement 2 years ago.
Is this time for comments from the public?
Well, I'd like to know exactly what you want me to go to the county with for an amendment. Is it just in case we have a catastrophic failure?
No, I want, as long as we've made a good faith effort to keep it in service, that they will not implement that clause on us. So that would really be for Mick to refine, frankly.
City has insurance, right?
We're self-insured.
Yep. Through JPA. So, we have those funds. If something catastrophic happens, we're supposed to work with JPA to fix stuff. We're not just abandoning it and we're working to fix something. If something happens, we're not putting it out of service and going against that. So,
well, as long as
that's why we have insurance.
and that's all I want to see, because as long as we're putting in the good faith effort to do what we can do and it's outside of our control, I feel like that's a more than enough coverage to protect us. So if they're willing to amend within the spirit of that, that should be fine.
Yeah, I can work with Mick on the correct verbiage for that. Again, I think their biggest concern is just not that you have a catastrophic failure, that is you just decide that you don't like it, you don't want it, or something's happened and you decided to push dirt into it. I don't think it's so much if the hillside fell off or it flooded or something.
And if they could summarize that in so many words, I feel like that would be fantastic and we would be on the same page, because that's not something that I'm anticipating we would do, but that would fall on the fault of a future council to do something ridiculous like that.
Your city attorney is weighing in via chat. He mentioned that landslides should fall within a typical, yes, position. I'm glad you said that word for me, because that's legalese. And that you're also committing to a completion deadline in the contract.
And do we have any flexibility on the completion deadline should we run into unforeseen circumstances? Because if they're willing,
nothing more than a verbal, we will work with you from the county.
okay, if they could just add a line just saying that they're willing to work with us, should we, make them aware of any unforeseen circumstances, that they will be flexible. So long as we continue to act in good faith towards the deadline.
Yeah, Mick did advise that that would just need to be revised because it is not included in the current draft.
Okay. I think that's all I would need to see to know that we're okay on that. And then that's where we would shift, should God forbid we need to, we would be able to show the county we're acting in good faith, because we would have already put in the legwork to say, okay, unfortunately, we ran into something we weren't expecting, but we have taken these actions to ensure that we are going to continue our commitment to the project we said we were going to complete. So that's bringing it full circle back to 9A.
And so once Mick,
Okay.
Okay, is it time for comments?
I would take public comments.
Any comment from the public?
Just so let you know, like say, I went to the bathroom, not because I had to go, but I talked to Andy Fisher. So part of the thing is that if you run into something like during construction, he goes, if you run into something that's catastrophic, that's unforeseen, that doesn't allow for further construction, most likely you probably haven't even borrowed that money yet. Right. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if you're not even borrowed the money, then there's no violation of any contract. So, like say you're talking about once you get the project done, it's completed, and then you have some fault or something that happens. I mean, you can't, that's something that they're not going to sit there and, worry about. But when it comes to running into those unforeseen things, he's just saying that, well, hey, you probably even got to that point where you're actually asking for those additional funds. I mean, we have plenty of other funds prior to probably even getting to that, to get to those points. So anyways, that's what he wanted me to share with you.
Any other public comment? I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. I'm Larry Hilberg. I had to step away from the dais, but because I own my personal home next to this property, I have the ability to speak here as a member of the public. One of the things that goes along with being on a council is fiduciary responsibility. And in order to meet that, it requires due diligence. And we're talking about not just $205,000. There are $480,000 of taxpayer money tied up in this. And the most common reason to close a project like this is community issues. If you look at the history all across the country, the reason skate parks close is because of issues with the community. And you can't just think, well, the county will waive this. I mean, why would they make us pay this back? Why would the state make us pay this back? That's a legal agreement that you're making. Another thing is that there is no design at this point. There are no engineering plans because it's going to be a new design if they're working on one. There is no budget at this point in time that's been presented to you. And more than that, there's no money allowed for mitigation, nothing for security, nothing for maintenance. And project management is big because once you accept this isn't a project that somebody else can manage for you. The city has to manage it. And because we have a contract engineer, that's taxpayer dollars. That is a lot of money. And I just caution you that, again, you're doing something that's going to be there a long, long time. And I don't believe that you have the right to speak for future councils when you haven't done due diligence yourself. So this has nothing to do with living next door. That gives me the ability to speak. That is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being deliberative and doing the right thing for the city of Colfax, not just getting swept up in something because it's going for 9 years. You owe it to the people that live here. Again, between city money, state money, and county money, we're talking $480,000 of taxpayer money. And you have to take care of it. Thank you.
If there's no more public comment in the room, we do have a participant on Zoom. Jane Gallagher would like to make a public comment. Jane, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Larry mentioned the maintenance.
We had
costs
stopped
coming up in
public
the
comments
future.
coming in through Zoom. And while I absolutely value her opinion, if we let this through, we're opening a can of worms. So
I 100%
I
agree.
think
We agreed on that, by the way.
Huh?
When did the council actually address that, by the way? Because the last time I remember us actually having a council conversation about this, we said we would cut Facebook and continue with Zoom, so I'm
after the Zoom calls that came in, with very colorful ones, I'm pretty sure we addressed it again. Mick may have a better answer on that one, but I thought.
Yeah, we did, and the minutes said we were gonna hold strong and let them keep commenting on Zoom, so that's where I'm confused where the shift happened.
I think with the issue tonight is the agenda, the first paragraph on the front page of the agenda states that you can make a comment via Zoom. Yeah. I do believe we are having audio issues, though.
Can we give Jane an alternate
Am
phone
I
number
on?
to call in on, and then we'll put it on speaker in front of the mic, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. Or she can chat her question.
Okay, chat. Chat is disabled.
Bob, you need to take these cookies with you. I'm not taking them home.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, City Council. Chat is disabled. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm Jane Gallagher at 135 Schultz. Larry raised an interesting question that I haven't seen answered. And one is, there's going to be maintenance required for the facility. And then Councilmember Burris mentioned the city being self-insured. Does this affect liability issues? And also the idea of a second location as a backup if this continues to go through. How about access for the helicopter for any injuries? The other question that was mentioned by Ms. McCully was about the approximately $375,000 that would have to be put out without knowing that this will actually work. At this point, I'll get off the phone so I can hear it on the Zoom. Thank you for your persistence.
You're welcome.
Any other public comment?
Make it work.
No other public comment? Comment from council members?
So we're gonna bureaucrat this thing to death and not approve this tonight?
No, quite the opposite. We're gonna bureaucrat it to death so it can pass tonight. So there's amendments that I'd like to have Mick pursue like we discussed. But outside of those contractual amendments to make sure that we have those protections understood in place and in writing. I'm okay with this contract, and mind you, this is not an end all be all. There's still a couple more things we need to do. You know, to Ty's point, this isn't the first money that gets tapped into in this process. So I'm happy to adopt the resolution as long as we state that we are requesting amendments to the contract. And are we not able to amend the resolution?
Well, it's gonna take time. We're gonna have to send it back to the county. Have to have Mick and the city manager look over it and then send it back to the county to make the amendments with their legal counsel.
Yes.
And then send it back to us for approval then. So it'd probably be a
Yes.
couple weeks out, at least the next meeting before we could have a contract that we can approve.
Yeah, because you're not
If you want
approving
those
anything.
amendments in there before.
What we would be approving here is we would be authorizing the city manager to execute on the agreement. So If we're amending the resolution the way I'm asking, we would be authorizing him to execute on the agreement pending those negotiations, so we don't need to bring it back to council. So I feel comfortable allowing Ron to sign off on this. Once those amendments are complete, I don't feel it needs to come back to us before he does that.
If the county decides not to put the amendments in there, if they say, sorry, we can't do that. This is our standard agreement and this is what goes for everybody. And we've already approved the agreement. Are we gonna bring it back to council and say, well, now we're gonna approve the agreement?
It's not unapproving the agreement. It's we're giving him conditional authority to approve the agreement. So if he does not have what he needs, he would not be able to approve it and it would need to come back to council for a second decision. So this would say in the best case scenario, if we're able to get the language changes that meet the spirit of what we're asking for, that Ron's able to proceed. And if we're not able to get them, then yes, we would have to have another conversation. I'd ask we do it at a special meeting. So that's the proposal I'm putting on the table. Because I don't feel comfortable executing on this grand of an amount, given the size of our budget, without asking for what I feel is very, very small, reasonable amendments to the contract.
The city attorney advised that it might be a better idea to bring the contract back when it is amended for your request.
Okay, do we have a motion to that?
I move we approve 9B as written.
Do I hear a second?
So I think we have two motions on the table and you have to take the second one first. So you take Sean's motion first. I think that's how it works with the Robert's Rules of Order, but maybe Mick can clarify. We don't have this situation very often.
Although the second one I don't believe the second motion hasn't been seconded.
Oh, neither motion's been seconded.
So you need a second.
Okay.
Should we review which motion we're
Okay.
voting on?
So the first motion that I put on the table was that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute on the agreement pending the requested modifications that we have asked for.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
Well, with Mick's requested to come back to the council anyways, do you want to change your wording on that or not?
The point of that was to expedite it, so. Oh God, this is ridiculous.
It's gotta, so we'd have to just provide staff direction to go back and rework the agreement with the county for these funds. That would be, it's either that or approve it or pick something else.
That's pretty much it. Either we approve it as it stands tonight. We go back and we negotiate and we either A, bring it back to council before we officially let him put a signature on it, or B, we say we're okay with him putting a signature on it as long as it meets the requirements that we just asked for. So what I was proposing is that we let Ron sign it and we don't bring it back to council unless we absolutely have to. But Mick is advising it's better to bring it back to council. So
Said I again recommend bringing it back.
yeah, okay. All right, I'm gonna change my motion to bring it back at a special meeting.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Special meeting, next meeting or a special meeting as soon as.
Special meeting before that so we can sign it fast.
So as soon as he gets it back.
Exactly.
As soon as it comes in, calls.
Can we check with Mick about noticing for a special meeting and how soon we could get that done in the time frame, just to make sure?
That's Mick and the county both. So,
Yeah.
so trying to put a date on it saying it's coming back next Wednesday is pretty optimistic.
Please.
I just want to make sure you guys, obviously this is confusing as whatever, for Andy Fisher, they better be careful, even if I agree, amendments still have to go through county council.
Right.
It's not just a simple thing. And at the end of the day, they need to deliver the scope to get paid, and I don't see council moving too far off a standard agreement that practically every other local agency in the county is. So that's just where you got, again, this is common verbiage, and this will be the first, he says that they're actually someone asking for an addition, so now it has to go, that's what you guys, it has to go to county council. And if they say it doesn't apply, then it has to come back as original. But there's more of a process, so it's not a quick fix. It's gonna be through county council and then.
Yeah, because it's amending pro forma language.
Shall we have another motion?
Well, I have another question real
A
quick.
more complex motion?
We got a question.
So it's gonna,
And the only thing is that the state grant that you guys approved a while back, $175,000, you're on the hook for like 30 years.
Yeah.
It's 24 years.
24, yeah.
Hence why I'm being so difficult here as the numbers continue to rack up.
That, and again, so the state is not, also that's been agreed on, it's already been
Yeah.
approved, so before it's changes that state.
Yeah.
So it's just, that's why there's confusion on their end too, why we're.
Now, just for clarification, there is no penalty system I see built into the state agreement.
Right.
So I'm not sure if they just decide not to give you any more money or how that is, but there is no penalty system in it that I can find.
Okay.
We've had Ty come up a couple times, so it seems only fair at this point. We've basically waived the speaking times.
Yeah.
Gotta be consistent.
Speaking again as a member of the public. I think it was pretty clear direction from Mick. You can't just create these amendments out of nowhere. I believe that you as a council have to specifically state what those amendments should be, now to allow them to just appear for some special meeting in the future. I mean, we're again dealing with something that has no design, no budget, and something the city has to front all the money for ahead of time because the money is paid back to the city in arrears. You have to be specific.
Mhm.
You know, you owe it to the people that live here. And thank you for my extra minute. Okay.
we've executed a ton of agreements.
All right, do we have a,
Like, just
do we
like
have a
this.
motion?
So my motion was not seconded. So if Sean wants to put his motion on the table and see if he has a second.
Move we approve item 9B as written. We've gone over these, we've used these contracts multiple times. I don't see why just for this particular project, it needs to be an issue 5 years later. So my motion is approved 9B as written, so we can continue the process.
Okay, without a second, do we have another
I'll
motion?
second it. I'm new.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor?
May I do a roll call on this
Yeah,
item?
Roll call. Yeah.
Councilmember Burris,
No.
Hilberg is abstaining from this item. McCauley,
Yes.
Loman,
Yes.
Mayor Douglas.
No. Do we have another motion?
I'm gonna move that we request the amendments. And that we bring this back at a special meeting at the soonest available date. To review the response from the county, even if it's no, we are not going to entertain your amendments.
Okay, so from the council, I'll need exact verbiage of what you want, or Nick will, so you can.
So I'm gonna be very clear on this. We are not able to give the specific legal language that would be required for the amendment, but I think that we've given 2 highlighted points that we would like Mick to provide the language on. And I feel like if we're bringing the actual contract itself back with or without said amendments, this council will have a final opportunity, and he can also send around a memo prior to the finalization with county council for us to comment on. I feel like we have enough opportunity to drill down the specific wordage if that's even necessary. I feel like that the requests that we made were very simple and really shouldn't be very complex to add. I'll just ask Nick, do you understand the nature of what we've asked to be added?
He at one time had asked if there was a consensus on the amendments. I think if you clarify the 2 main amendments that you're asking for, and it's shown that there's a consensus, that might happen in the motion itself. Well, you don't have to have the exact verbiage. They were regarding timeline.
Yeah, it was regarding,
So it's regarding catastrophic failure and holding us to the 20-year timeline. And the second one was regarding good faith effort to keep the project on schedule.
it was essentially, we would like provisions for good faith efforts to keep it in service. Good faith efforts to put it in service in the first place. And for us to have a provision for catastrophic failure. I understand that's under force majeure, but we'd like to make sure that that's absolutely crystal clear. Those were the three highlighted points. And without looking at the contract directly in front of me and sitting down for a moment to mull on that while everyone else is sitting here waiting, I don't have specific language that I want to put in there. So if Nick could provide that in the memo, that would be fine. But even if it just means that Nick has a conversation this week with county council about it, if they say, hell no, we're not gonna do it. And he says, okay, this is your answer, council, they're not gonna entertain it, then fine, Monday we have a special meeting and we talk about this again. Well, that's a very long-winded way of saying what my motion is. I am hard pressed on having these amendments.
The supervisors do meet next Tuesday, so if we're able to move quickly, then hopefully they might be able to address it next week.
I don't think anything that we're asking for is so far outside of the realm of the spirit of a contract that it can't be considered. No, I already have. I got it on here.
Are we waiting for Mick's response or are we?
I believe that the direction has been restated and is clear. I believe we're waiting on a second to Trinity's motion.
Well, to get it moving along, I'll second it.
All those in favor?
You need a roll call.
A roll call.
Ready for vote? Councilmember Burris?
Yes.
Hilberg is abstaining, of course. McCauley?
Yes.
Loman?
No.
Mayor Douglas?
Yes. Those and yeses are jumping around like bingo game. Okay, I think we move on now to item 9C, animal control contract. The request is that the fee go up 60. Oh, we have a presentation. I don't have to quote percentage.
Do you mind if we take a brief recess, Mayor?
That's a good idea.
Give everybody 5 minutes to get up to scratch. Sorry.
At the end. We are returning to open session with a presentation from Animal Control.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have Jason Phillips. He's Deputy Director of Environmental Health and Animal Services, and Katie Ingram, Animal Services Manager, with us to answer your questions.
Good evening, council. Thanks for giving me a few minutes to talk here. I'm just going to go over a quick summary of the type of things we do for this contract. So you have a better idea. So I'll just read off my notes here. So Animal Services provides comprehensive animal shelter and field officer services, enforcing and adhering to applicable state and county animal care and animal safety laws in unincorporated areas and the cities we serve. Animal Services responds to thousands of calls for service, including loose animal, injured animal, barking, and biting reports, and working with the DA on legal cases. We also house animals in the county shelter in Auburn, working on adoptions, returning animals to owners for around 2,000 animals each year, and that's all areas, not just the city. And we work closely with community members to support them and their animals. I did want to give a quick plug too, because our shelter is very full. So if anyone is interested in adopting or fostering animals, you can call the shelter at 530-886-5541. And we'd love some help taking care of our animals. And just a couple notes too, just to see the type of service that we've been giving the city over the last couple of years. So over the last 2 years, we've responded to an average of about 100 calls per year for field services. So again, a barking complaint, a biting complaint, a loose animal, injured animal, deceased animal. So that's about 100 calls per year. 21-22 was 82 calls, and 22-23 was 125 calls. And our shelter, we have had animals that we've found in the city, and we do geocode them, so we know whether it's within city limits or outside city limits. So animals that were geocoded where we found them inside the city, and we have housed animals at the shelter in the 21-22 fiscal year for 753 days, in the 22-23 year for 1,093 days. So we've been pretty busy, and I think just to address one of the main points here is why did the contract increase? So the last year of the final year of the last contract was about 26,000 per year, or it was 26,000, $26,052 to be exact. And now the first year of the contract that we're proposing would be $40,426. So that's an increase of about $14,000 per year. Now, some of the factors that go into that, one is inflation. So we've had those costs go up. Also, the amount of animals, or it's actually a better way to put it is the length of stay for animals has increased greatly. It's been really challenging to find adopters. And in the industry, we're always trying to keep our live release rate high. We're at 92%. That's very good. And with that, we have animals in the shelter longer, and we're trying to find adopters. So those costs, that's another cost there, is that it's just taking longer to find adopters for animals. And the third reason why the cost increase, I think, is what it is because we haven't studied our actual costs in a while. The last contract that we renewed with your city was 21. And that was just right after the COVID year. And we didn't think that was a good time to do a study on what actuals were at the time because everything was just going all over the place. And so with that, we just put on 3% annual escalators. And then prior to that, we don't have record of the last time we did a true study. So I think those three factors are why we ended up with that approximate $14,000 increase in cost. I don't expect in future contracts we will have that because now we have this study on the books and we know what the costs are. If anyone's concerned, we stripped out most of the overhead. So, for example, I'm with the Health and Human Services Department. We have the county health officer. We took all of that out. So you're not paying for any of that. You're basically just paying for the administrative costs that's related to the work we do. So Katie, a small fraction of my job, not all of it, because I do other things for the county too. So we try to make it to where you're just paying for those shelter and field services and the support that you would have to have, like for like an officer, like, you know, a supervising officer and a manager. So that's what those costs are. We are renewing our contracts for all our cities, and we want to be fair. So the cost per animal is the same for every single city. So no one's paying more. Because really, if you think about it, it doesn't matter where the animal came from. The cost of care for them in the shelter is the same. It's the same cost. So that's where we're at. And one more point of interest too, the costs broken down between the two services. If you're interested, the sheltering costs were about $26,000 of that $40,000 per year cost, and the field services were about $14,000 of that $40,000 cost. So I think I've gone through pretty much everything there, and I guess I'll see if anyone has any questions for me.
Yeah, I just had a quick curiosity. So, you know, when people recover their animals, what does that look like from that standpoint? And as far as fees paid, you know, do you successfully recover fees from a lot of people, or, you know, what does that tend to look like?
Sure. For return to owner, we do charge fees for holding the animal. There may be some situations, rare circumstances where we realize maybe it wasn't their doing, or there was a confusion. Maybe we pick up an animal, but it really wasn't loose. And we wouldn't charge, but yeah, we do charge fees wherever we can. We have a very robust licensing program, and we require animals to be licensed because we know if we find a licensed animal that we can return them sooner. And we've been increasing our licensing quite a bit every year.
And are there any, you know, for low income households that really can't pay a fee? Obviously, logically speaking, it makes more sense to reunite the animal with the family regardless of the fee versus continuing to house them as some kind of punitive situation. I'm just wondering, I know you said that the 92% live release, that's fantastic, obviously. So I'm just curious, because this is a very low income community and we do have a few people whose animals are escape artists. Just curious if people are able to, you know, plead their case in that respect and, you know, potentially get those kind of fees waived. I'm wondering what the educational aspect, so people are on top of it.
Sure. So we actually have it written into our county code that we can waive fees for situations like that. There are times that we do that too. So yeah, if someone from the city wanted to have a conversation with us, like, hey, dog got out. I didn't know my fence was open. My kid did something dumb. I have kids too. I know that happens. And yeah, we'd have that conversation with them.
That's good to know. I just wanted to question, because obviously responsible pet owners are the best.
I think we have a comment here from Katie Ingram, if that would be okay.
I just wanted to share one quick point, just because it's such a great question. In addition to that, and Jason's spot on, we waive fees, and I'm glad you asked that question, because I think we do have to weigh what's in the best interest of the animal and the length of stay, and ensuring that we keep your costs low. Keeping an animal in the shelter obviously can increase your costs, the stress on the animal, not good for an owner that wants their animal back. So we'll waive the fees. But another thing that we also do in a situation like that is offer reduced cost services. So low cost spay and neuter, sometimes free spay and neuter. So we'll say, hey, we'll waive your fee, but let us neuter or spay your dog or cat so that they're not going to go home, have puppies, have kittens that are going to contribute to overpopulation that affect city of Colfax, affect the shelter. And then let us microchip them so that they can come back home sooner, and let us give them vaccines. So those are things that at the end of the day provide services to your residents, and then also help provide better services to the animals, and then keep those animals from coming back into the shelter. So just thought I'd add to that.
No, that's fantastic. That's exactly the kind of content I was hoping for, because anytime we have to pay for these contracts, you know, we have to explain to people, these are our tax dollars. What are we as the taxpayers getting out of it, you know, versus just the punitive result of other people being irresponsible. So that's reassuring that there's really something for everybody out of this.
Yeah, our ultimate goal is really, I mean, obviously we're looking at the whole picture. It's not the way probably people might think of a shelter, or the way that we would have thought of shelters in the past, of like us running around with dog nets, you know, we don't want to gather up more animals to bring into the facility. We want to provide services to the community that are going to help people be better pet owners, help keep pets in homes, and then help use the shelter for animals that really need us to provide our services to them. So our goal is really keep pets in the community, provide services that are going to keep pets and owners happy and healthy, save costs for your community, and then ultimately use those saved costs to help more animals that we can for the city of Colfax.
Beautiful. That concludes my questions.
Other questions?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Oh, I have one quick comment. The one time that I reached out to your organization, it was wonderful. Somebody came right away and took care of the issue and supported us. But my other question is, are there any new services included in these costs, or is there any reduction of services?
Yeah, either way, yeah, you do a bit of that.
So yeah, the services are basically the same, and what we're doing is, and also with the contract, you can see here with the shelter days, or even the field officer services, you had 1 year that was lower in work and 1 year that was higher. We just did an average of both, and that's our estimate. So we're not going at like, the top level. We're going at the average of the last couple of years. And basically the way we look at it is, your average for field services was about 100 calls per year. If we get 150 calls, we're going to do them all. And we're not going to charge you for it. There's no provision for us to do that. That's basically where we think we need to be. So even if we do take more calls, we're going to cover it. And so, yes, we're providing all services. If anyone from the community needs help, they call us. It doesn't have to go to your city staff. We also do agency assist. So if sheriff needs to serve a warrant and they know there's an animal there, we'll go there and help them out too. They're comprehensive services. So it's all taken out of your hand. And if there's any questions about whether or not the city being compliant with animal care code, the questions are directed to us.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the number of habitual offenders, because it's something we see on a very regular basis around here. It's the same dogs that are out on a regular basis. So I understand wanting to lower the prices and work with people, but for the responsible ones, it's the same people whose dogs are out on a regular basis, it sounds, around here. So how do you treat the habitual offenders differently if you do it all?
Hey, great question. So we certainly also understand both of those points. So yes, we want to return animals back to their owner, but we also do run an animal control program. And so it is a beautiful thing about our agency that we're a shelter and animal control, and both sides work really well together. And so I oversee both programs and both supervisors. And so there is a lot of ongoing communication between myself and those teams. We talk about repeat offenders. There are mechanisms in place. And so when we talk about waiving fees, those are generally going to be for first-time impounds, not repeat offenders. We're not usually looking for the dog that's been in 2 or 3 times and saying, hey, let's waive those fees, unless there's some compelling reason. We had a natural disaster or some issue that makes a lot of sense. Those fees in those situations do escalate, and then they do escalate if those dogs are unaltered. And so there are state mechanisms that allow us to charge more and have those more stern discussions. And then there are animal control mechanisms as well, like citations and things that we utilize. So if you know of those, I would encourage your residents to call us. Sometimes we don't know that dogs are habitual strays because folks see them out and they don't necessarily think to call our dispatch and let us know. So do call and let us know. Even if we don't catch them out, we still log that report, and then that becomes a historical chain in our system. And we do want to know so that we can address it with the owner. We can escalate if needed. We do start with education, so we don't just come in and go crazy. But we'll start with education. We'll start with offering those resources. We'll start with saying, hey, can we help you fix your fence? Can we provide you something that maybe you're having a challenge with so that we can address this and resolve the problem here. And then if that doesn't resolve it, then we can use those other tools if we need.
Go for it.
Follow-up question real quick, because you did mention, you don't always get calls in, or people call in, you might not be able to catch them. When you mentioned the number of animals, was that animals housed, or was that calls responded to? That this number is based off of?
Did you provide both?
I just want to make sure. Okay, I just want to understand, because you did mention that, the fees were assessed based on the number of animals per district. So what is that number of animals?
So yes, the last numbers that I was giving, I was speaking to field services as an example. So I'll just go through both sets. So, we call them shelter days. So it's how many days an animal's in a shelter. So, if we have a dog and it's in the shelter for 20 days, that's 20 shelter days. And we look at cost that way because we know they have to be fed a certain amount of times every day. Their kennel has to be cleaned a certain amount of time. We actually have great volunteers that come to our shelter and they take our dogs on walks on a regular basis. So that's great. And if you have community members that want to help and volunteer, please help them do that. And back to the numbers. So the shelter days for 21-22 were 753, and the shelter days for 22-23 were 1,093. And again, we based the contract on the average of those costs. So we didn't go for the highest number. We went on the average. We're hopeful that we get through the shelter capacity issues. We've just seen a lot of strange things going on, I think with inflation, I think with a lot of telecommuters going back to their offices, not knowing what to do with their dogs. And they're ending up in our shelter. So we're hoping we get through that. And that's why also we just went with the average number of those shelter days, not the high number for the contract.
And to be clear, I'm the maths for me. I'm happy with the number. I just appreciate the extra education. So thank you.
Of course.
Okay, I have one other quick question. Is there a fee for dropping off a stray?
No, there's not.
Okay, you initially mentioned 100 calls. Is that in the city limits of Colfax?
City limits, yes.
Okay, and call means physically coming out here.
So yeah, not just a call received, but a call we had to physically respond to. And across our entire jurisdiction, that number is about 7,000 per year. And the city landed on about 100 of those 7,000.
Right, and I have one more question, and this is more like a procedure question that was brought up recently. What is your requirement when it comes to an aggressive dog? We have a dog that is notoriously getting out of its yard and going after people that are on walks. And there's been this argument of, well, but if it's not seen, it's just reported, we can't do anything. Can the sheriff deal with it? Can you not? Because apparently it's becoming quite often that this particular situation I'm thinking of, and there were several others mentioned at the same time. But yeah, it's leaving its property and very aggressively approaching people that are, walking on their own or with their pets. So how in the world does that get dealt with on the owner when you're not actually there to see it? It's not that the dog stays out on it all the time. It's only when people are walking past that it's leaving its property and being aggressive.
We don't necessarily have to see it, but we do need a witness that's willing to write a statement and sign like a third party affidavit potentially for us. So might be good to get, like, if I don't know if you know the address where this incident is occurring, but if we can get that information, I can at least pass that along to make sure if we received a report that I can follow up on it. If we haven't, just have somebody call it in. But yeah, I think more specific information better if they can say, hey, I was here at this time and I want to meet with an officer and I want to report it and give my statement versus it's out all the time charging people, because we really need the way the law is written is we need very specific evidence to allow us to do something. We can seize animals and pursue potentially dangerous designation, which comes with restrictions and things like that. But the only way we can do that is if we have evidence that is documented and witness statements that go along with it. So, yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you.
now we do I hear a motion? Oh, yeah, public comment. Council, public input.
Sorry, having a problem with that tonight. So there was one question from Jane Gallagher. She sent me a text since she couldn't get it on Zoom. It says, summary line 3, the wording is confusing. 84K for 2 years is 4 payments of 21K paid semi-annually. Thanks. So yeah, just clarification on the wording on that for how the payment goes out.
We just put it into two.
Yeah, so the two-year not to exceed total is the 84,897. And then it's in the form of the sub payments that are, what is it, twice a year, we make the 21. Well, that doesn't matter.
So the way the contract is set up, if I may, is it's a 2-year contract. The first year base is $40,426 per year. That's made in quarterly payments. The second year is that same amount, $40,426 plus any CPI that's added to it. So the reason the contract amount is at the 84,897 is to account for any potential CPI. For example, we're running probably about 3.5% CPI right now. So I would estimate it would be similar to that for the CPI for the second year. So that would put us below that 84,000.
Great.
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, thank you. I think I answered the question.
And I think the contract reads that with a 38 notice, either side could break the contract. Is that right?
That is correct.
Either side within 30 days. So, all right, thank you. Any other public comment? Any comment from the council?
I'll move, we adopt the resolution as written.
I second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Well, item 9B, 3rd of July funding request. Take 2 of them.
So do we have presentation or anything on this one? On 90, do we have any kind of a? I felt like the staff report didn't quite tell me a whole lot about this organization, so I was hoping we might have some more information.
Yeah, they're here on Zoom to describe the organization.
Oh, fair.
But is Zoom working is the challenge. Do we have the audio?
Okay, so we might need to call them in on the phone or something.
And Zoom in?
She was supposed to.
Because the first question I just had off the bat is this organization a private company? Is it a nonprofit? I'm not familiar with them. Okay.
I'm asking.
Okay.
That was my impression. They were going to be on Zoom to be able to discuss.
Yeah, it's a lot of.
Where are they located?
Southern California.
It's on the phone. I feel like you need to talk to a person. Not a robot. You know, I was telling Caroline, like, it wasn't leaving the washer, it was getting off the couch. I was good to go, everything was great, until I got up off the couch wrong.
That's how it happened. Grand muscles with something heavy, and it's do something really light and easy, just slightly wrong. And
Hey, did you need a swift reminder, you're over the age of 30?
yeah.
Does anybody know any of these people that are in?
Yeah, I'm messaging one right now that requires. So.
This is about to come at class, I don't want to continue this, don't have to.
Strong neck.
This isn't. AI.
Oh, no,
So while we're waiting, I'm not familiar with the organization or the folks involved.
So.
And so I'm a little hesitant here. Cause even with local organizations, I've seen where not everybody has the same skill sets with managing money. I would ask if we are able to get a hold of a person. The original intent with us volunteering funds for this kind of thing was to pay for fireworks. If they're open to having us pay their firework vendor directly, I would be really amicable to having that conversation. It would make me feel really a lot more comfortable about donating money.
So.
That's probably gonna come out a little bit more than what they're asking for. If we
Yeah.
pay for the fireworks directly, so.
Asking for I'm scrolling to find her phone
And
number.
that's fine. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to their efforts, but if they're amicable to us making a direct payment, it would at least give like a clear chain of custody of funds that's easy to show the taxpayers we did what we said we were gonna do with it.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I mean, the gal who's the local one that started the process to do it. I mean, she's local. She's lived here for a while and, you know, guys was told they needed a 501c3. One of her good friends runs this organization in Southern California that runs major events like this. They have a lavender festival that she's run and stuff. I have Lisa's phone number. Oh, here's one more thing. Give me a.
Seems like we need a proponent, don't we?
Yeah.
I know, I don't wanna.
Right. Well, if we can't get a hold of her, I'll just bring it back next meeting.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Clearly there's some confusion on having them here.
Are you guys familiar with the group or what scope they're planning to try to put on? And the whole thing?
Yeah, pretty much the same ways as what was in the past.
I just meant like size and scale of what they're trying to put on it. Okay. Well, I'd say their request here is very reasonable if that's what they're trying to do.
One of the things I would ask is, what have they done for themselves? And what plans do they have to try to raise more funds?
Right. If we're unable to get somebody, we can just table this till the next meeting.
Yeah.
How much time should we give them?
We'll just wait for Carolyn and then if not, we can just jump to go to the order, I guess.
Well, she said you put it on for the 22nd.
Well, let's continue.
Well, that'll explain the confusion, but I put it on for the, yes. So it'd be.
I'll move that we can bring it back to the 22nd.
There was some confusion. Okay, my apologies. I must not have made myself clear.
There you go. She goes, I just got that email.
Okay. 22nd is item 10, go to the order, Sean.
What an interesting meeting tonight. No other comments. That's, I love bureaucracy. and the system. Thanks.
Next, Larry. Nothing from me tonight. Except I need to go to the gym, I think, because somebody, I think Shauna was able to put this flipper on my agenda and I can't do it. Yeah, cookie baker.
I know we have a whole lot on our plate. Our lovely staff, can we put on a future agenda that we start discussing our signage and our light yellow signs with really small printing and seeing about getting those redone and changing the theme of our Colfax Clear Channel automated signs to something that's going to help our businesses a little bit more than people fishing.
And right, so the sign would probably come up in the budget time because I'm sure it's going to be quite expensive to change all the signs, even keep the posts.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I want the post, but I think we need to address, we need bigger words and a different color than pale yellow, something that will actually stand out.
Because that would be a full rebrand again.
That gave us that stuff.
And
we made a brand new consultant.
Right.
To come up.
We need a different branding consultant because that font is so small, nobody can read it. That would be my first request. I don't think that those signs do us much good when it comes to driving people downtown. So however we need to start discussing to look at that, I think we need to do it if we actually want to make some movement, some solid movements to improving our downtown visibility.
Yeah, I think we never quite hit the consistency part of it. We did a really good job on like the initial F part. We got the logoing and stuff, but we swapped out a few signs, but that was about it. There's not enough consistency of it to kind of like create a visual trail. So maybe we need to be a little more consistent, and maybe make the words a little bigger.
Yeah, so I like the font, I like the style of the post, the light yellow color and the very small font and the choice in wording, I think needs to be readdressed because I don't think it's proper for highlighting our businesses. So at some point, I think when we can work it into all of the many things you do, I would like us all to have a conversation about if I got to use the word rebranding, I can. I just don't think it needs to be that involved, but I think I would love to have the chamber as part of that conversation. I think it would be fantastic, but it definitely also includes the ads, you know, the pictures that we have on our ads up on the billboard. But definitely those signs and their color and size of font and choice in wording, I think needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I would support the rebranding for sure, because to me, those signs don't do any branding. There are just a few words on them that this is Colfax and it's such and such is off in this direction, but it doesn't make any kind of statement about Colfax at all.
I wouldn't support rebranding, but I would support a conversation about strategic signage.
That means altering those signs, absolutely.
I just want to make sure that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel the moment we just finished getting a wheel.
Yeah.
Because I like the wheel.
Yeah, like I said, I like the style of the signs. I'm okay with the fonts. It's the size, and I think we need some more words to highlight our downtown, because nothing on those signs says come down here and shop. Visit, explore, those are fine, but nothing says, oh, there's stores down there, go spend your money. But larger fonts and the pale yellow for those signs, I don't think works, so.
So same message, larger fonts and different background.
Yeah, something that actually stands out and is visible instead of just blends in, yes.
All right, Trinity.
Yeah, button's got a lot.
I ran out of words. It's time. I'm done.
All right, my good of the order is, 7 days from now, there's elections at the Sierra Vista Community Center, so be sure to vote if you're a member and put in a board there that will fix their potholes in their parking lot. And one last thing is that I'm getting a bid from a vet to see if they can, it's a local vet, see if they can do better than the animal control price tag. So something may come of it.
I didn't know vets did that.
Pardon?
I didn't know vets did that.
Well, they're making up a bid, so, but anyhow. City manager, anything?
Just back on that vet thing, just try to remember that with the presentation that the animal control does more than just pick up animals and house them. So their contract is much more in depth than just a simple, we grabbed a stray dog and put it in the kennel and pet it.
But hey, if you find a bid for that, I'm sure you can probably find a new police force too while you're at it. The overlap is significant.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 26, the meeting's over. Rule 8, 2024.
I do. Good.